The losing streak hits 10. The owner is flying to meet the team in Montreal, reportedly. And we've got trade rumors as well. All ahead, coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, and thanks for making today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can check us out on our YouTube channel, and be sure to hit us up on our Locked On Sabres text club. You can sign up for that by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Sabres for your latest breaking news alerts, game commentary, score updates. If you're not watching, like yesterday, if you were watching the Bills game and you wanted to keep up with what was going on with the Sabres, you could do that on our text club as well. Again, join subtext.com/Locked On Sabres to sign up for that. Sneaky Joe DiBiase in a Monday edition of the show. We have got a lot to get to on today's show. We got the day tracker up here on our YouTube channel, up on the side. If you see it there, it is 23 days since a Buffalo Sabres win. They have now lost 10 games in a row following a 5-3 loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Another game where the Sabres led by more than one goal and found a way to lose. We'll get to what happened in that game and big picture. What we had on a swivel today, because Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts, today on his show, said that he's heard Terry Pegula is on his way or is going to Montreal today to meet the team in Montreal. And that could mean a lot of different things. We'll go through some of the potential things that it could mean coming up on today's show as well. And then while listening to Friedman today, I kind of want to go over a couple things he had to say, because he talked about a thing he's heard about Bo Byram. And it kind of made me think, wow, is that the first sign that there is not going to be a long-term relationship between the Buffalo Sabres and Bo Byram, who is going to be a restricted free agent at the end of this season? So, a lot to get to. That'll be something we get to a little bit later on in today's show as well. Thanks for hanging with me in the last week or so, as I've not had a voice at all. You could still hear me. I mean, I'm more than a week after this thing that I was trying to kick, and I still kind of got a little bit of a raspy thing going on, but good enough, of course, to do today's show. Ranting and raving, and at least yesterday, if you are a Bills and Sabres fan, which is probably 90+% of Sabre fans, you felt pretty good. You didn't let the Sabres get you down. The Bills had an incredible win. They beat the best team in the league on the road. Josh Allen, 4 more touchdowns. I mean, the Bills have done a great job to salvage Buffalo sports fans in the last 5 years, because if both teams had been bad at the same time here in the last couple of years, then it would be pretty tough to take. Sabres are not pulling their weight. They are not pulling their weight at all. They get kind of dominated in this game when you look at the numbers at the end of it. If we look against the Leafs in Toronto, by the way, Toronto will be in Buffalo on Friday, and I would expect 80+% of Leaf fans, I would imagine, are going to be in attendance for that one. If you look at some of the numbers, though, from last night's game, like, the Sabres really got outplayed thoroughly. Shots on goal, 41 for Toronto, 27 for Buffalo. For Buffalo. You had shot attempts, 78 for Toronto, 50 for Buffalo. Scoring chances in this one, 41 for the Maple Leafs, 41 for Toronto to 27 for Buffalo. How about that, by the way? 41 scoring chances against by the Sabres. That is the second most. Actually, excuse me. It was 47. The graphic's wrong. 47 for Toronto. That was the most scoring chances given up in a game by the Buffalo Sabres all season. The previous high was 42 against Dallas in late October. And then expected goals against in this game, also a season high, 5.55 expected goals by Toronto in this one to 2.3 for the Sabres. Kind of amazing. Devin Levi gives up 4 goals in this game, and he actually averaged, he saved a goal and a half above expected in this one. He actually, by the numbers, had a really solid game. The Leafs were all over the Sabres in this one. But the bigger story of the game is it's another blown lead. It's another game where, okay, you're not the better team on the night. But guess what? You had a 2-0 lead. And then you had a 3-1 lead. And you squandered it. And they break mentally. It's almost like they play as if they know they're going to give up the lead. Or they're terrified to do it. The Sabres had a 3-1 lead. Jack Quinn, who, by the way, finally beats a goaltender, right? Like, what if I told you going into this game, hey, Jack Quinn's going to score twice? A guy that has not scored on a goaltender all year is going to walk in and he's going to score twice. You probably would have loved your chances. And there was a point where I'm watching both games yesterday. I got the Bills game on the TV and I got the Sabres game on the smaller monitor. And the Bills had an important drive. Maybe it's somewhere in the second or third quarter, but they began their drive at like their own 25 or whatever. And the Sabres are up 3-1. And the Bills march down the field, big play, big play. And they score a touchdown. They finish their drive. And then you look over at the Sabre game. And remember, when the Bills drive started, the Sabres were leading 3-1. By the time the Bills drive ended, the Sabres were down 4-3. Amazing. The Leafs scoring 3 goals in a 2-minute, 31-second stretch in the second period. Nick Robertson and then John Tavares twice. Tavares then gets the empty netter in the third period. That 2-minute stretch, just boom, boom, boom. And there's the Toronto lead, and the Sabres never grabbed it back. In fact, how embarrassing in that third period. Sabres go into that third period, down a goal. They had just given up a 2-goal lead. They did not register a shot on goal in that third period until there were less than 10 minutes to go. They didn't, for half a period, they didn't even get a shot. This team is broken. This team is devastated mentally. This team is not talented. There's no, right now, for this season, there's no hope. There is no, I don't know where I could try to look for the optimism, try to look for, hey, Thompson is back to playing at Thompson level, right? And Luukkonen is not really regressing the way I thought he might. He's regressed a little, but not much at all. Just trying to find positives. It's what Lindy said. Lindy, after the game, said, I'm at a loss of words. Like, what's left? I'm going to interview Lindy Ruff tomorrow, and, like, I feel bad because I feel like I'm just going to ask him the same questions week after week after week, but, like, there's nothing else to go on here. It's the team breaks, the team cracks, the team can't score goals, the power play stinks. What else there? We know who they are, right? It's Daryl Green, the former Cardinals coach. They are who we thought they were. The Sabres are through, 31 games. They are who we thought they were. We know who they are now. We know who the Buffalo Sabres are at this point. They can't hold leads. They're bad on the power play. They can't score goals outside of their top 2 players. And especially without Rasmus Dahlin in the lineup, like they can't control pucks. They can't control possession. And I don't see that flipping around. I don't see the talent on this roster to flip it around. It's almost like, for me, I was worried all offseason. Like, I just don't think they're talented enough. I just don't think they have enough scoring. And it's like they got to December and they started believing that. They started realizing that. And when they realized that, maybe that's when mentally they just kind of went to you know what. I don't know. I'm just taking my best guess at, like, what has happened to them mentally. I'm not surprised by their inability to score. But mentally, it's just they're a broken group. They're a broken group that needs a shakeup. And I don't know that they have the man in charge to give you that shakeup. Here's the thing, though. we've got this rumor from Elliot Friedman about Pegula flying to Montreal. And let's explore what that could mean. I want to read through some text, too, from our Locked On Sabres text club about this. And then we'll get to some Bo Byram rumors as well. All ahead here in the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. Hey, you get some cheap hockey tickets around here if you want to take the fam out for a night out. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks will filter out all the fluff. It'll show you only incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks, also all in pricing. You see the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout, seat views. You get a panoramic view of what you're going to be looking at, your angle, how high up you are you above the netting, or are you on the glass, whatever you're going to be looking at in the arena. They're going to show you that in the app. Lowest price guarantee. If you find a ticket for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Find a ticket for less in the same row and section. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen. What will happen first? My voice comes back 100%, or the Sabres win a hockey game? We shall see. Although my voice is mostly back. But anyways, 10-game losing streak. As I pointed out on Friday, looking back 3 years ago in 2021, the Buffalo Sabres, after 12 losses in a row, fired their head coach, Ralph Kruger. We're sitting here at 10. I question the desire of the owner to make changes, and especially make changes in season. I have questioned the desire of the owner to ever want to move on from Kevin Adams, who has worked for him for a decade plus. They have always had the back of. He's a Pegula guy, Kevin Adams. But here comes Elliot Friedman, who actually I want to double this up. Chad Dieneman covers the Sabres for expectedbuffalo.com, his site. He tweeted last night, right after the Sabre game, about there being a little more tension in the air, if you will, about the Sabres. A little bit more tense of a tone after that loss to Toronto to allow the win streak to get to double digits. You have just connecting dots here, just looking through and basically connecting dots. What Chad said, word for word, was it was the first night that there was a little bit of patience is wearing thin tone when he talked to some folks. So that's what Chad's heard. Elliot Friedman then this morning says he's heard Terry Pegula is going to Montreal to meet the team in Montreal. And as Friedman put it, that could mean multiple different things. That could often mean one of two, really. That he's either going to give a vote of confidence and kind of get the group, like, this is the group. This is the group. You guys are going to turn it around. Kind of a vote of confidence for everybody. Or changes. Or he's going to make changes. Looking back around the league, an owner, as Friedman pointed out, does not often go up on the road to meet his hockey team. I'm starting to wonder if there could actually be changes. The owner going out to meet the team in the middle of the year, I don't know. That with Chad's tweet and all of that together, they canceled practice. They canceled practice today. So a lot of stuff is going on. Maybe that's just the owner is going to Montreal and the whole team is going to meet with him, so they're not going to be out on the ice. Like that could be all that means. All I want to say is Keep your phone handy is why you want our text club. Locked On Sabres text club. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. I'd keep my ears open. I'd keep my eyes open. I would be watching. Let's see if something happens in the next 24 to 36 hours for the Buffalo Sabres. My bet would be that nothing happens. But I am not closed off to the idea that we are going to get something soon. If that does happen, I know where your mind is going. It's where mine goes, is where everybody's would naturally. You're thinking about Kevyn Adams being fired. That's the change that I'm guessing everybody is thinking to themselves right now. They're going to fire Kevyn Adams as the general manager, and then we see what comes after. I would bet most likely they would just promote Jason Karmanos from associate GM to GM, or he could bring someone in from that's out there available right now. I don't know who that would be, and that would surprise me. Could they fire Lindy Ruff? I don't think so. I got that question from our text club. I know Adams is more likely, but could they fire Lindy? Nothing's impossible, right? Like, the owner is not, probably not happy, embarrassed by the 10-game losing streak, and who knows what he'll want to do. It would shock me if they fired Lindy Ruff. Shock me if they fired Lindy Ruff. So I don't want to say there's no chance that they would do that, but I don't think the coach is the one that goes. I think the GM is the one that goes in the middle of the season. Could they fire assistants? I mean, they are their assistants. I guess you could do that. Have Lindy bring in some of his guys if you want. I don't really know what else change would be, though, other than Adams. Or is it firing Adams, or is it, hey, we're going to shuffle things around. We're going to bump Adams into a different office. He's going to be VP of hockey operations, some president of hockey operations if you want it. And Karmanos will be the general manager. Maybe job title shift. I don't know what the change would be. Number one on the list, though, would seem to be Adams is just fired. Or we get nothing. So keep an eye on it. A lot of people are talking about it, are watching out for it. The owner going to Montreal. Things are bad when the owner who lives in Florida and has got a football team that is coming off one of the most exciting wins of the season in the sport is spending his time to fly to Montreal in the middle of December to meet with his hockey team that's on a 10-game losing streak. Definitely watching out for some type of movement. We'll see. Does somebody get fired? When we come back, the other thing that Friedman talked about today that I wanted to get in before we do an episode on Dylan Cousins and his trade value, he talked about Bo Byram when talking about a fantasy trade idea that he had. And what he said about Byram kind of leads me to think maybe there's not a long-term relationship in the cards between the Sabres and Bo Byram. Get to that when we return here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the rest of the NFL action this regular season and, of course, hockey throughout the winter and into the spring with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is also presented by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. Had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, saved a total of over 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features, the subscription tracker. Used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and have saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen. And, of course, if you want to check out Locked On Bills with Joe Marino, they got an exciting show after the Bills beat the Lions on Sunday. So, Bo Byram. Let's get to the rumor that Friedman talked about. So, they were talking about the Sabres, and Friedman, just kind of on a tangent, goes, I thought of a crazy trade idea the other day. And he says, what about Dylan Cousins and Bowen Byram to Vancouver for Elias Pettersson? Kind of a fanciful trade that just no chance, right? Like, Vancouver would never say yes to that. And Pettersson's elite. And they'd be getting two players. One's a really good defenseman. The other is a really struggling forward that you're committed to for a long time. No chance in my mind. But when they were picking that idea apart and they got to Byram, and they were talking about reasons why, like, okay, yeah, this is why it probably wouldn't happen. They got to Friedman saying, well, I've heard Byram wants to be a number one defenseman, and I wonder if he wouldn't love the setup in Vancouver. To speak to, well, they have Quinn Hughes, who is the number one defenseman. Well, hold on. Rewind there a second. What's that? Bo Byram wants to be a number one defenseman, and Friedman labeled it with as he gets closer to UFA status. That's important to him. It's one of his priorities. And okay, well, he's a RFA at the end of this season, restricted free agent after this coming year. And then next year, he would be able to hit UFA status. So he could do the thing that Matthew Tkachuk did with Calgary, that Reinhart did with the Sabres, which is, all right, I'm a restricted free agent. I'm only going to sign a one-year deal, and then I'm going to test the unrestricted free agency market. So you could sign me. I'll play here for a year, and then I want to test free agency. After this season, Byram can do that. He can pull that lever with the Sabres. He has leverage in that department. And if Friedman's correct, and I have no doubt that he is, I mean, he's the most plugged-in insider in the sport. Do you think Byram likes his setup here? If one of his top priorities is he wants to be a number one defenseman. By the way, who's Bo Byram to just demand being a number one defenseman on a team? I think he's really good. Really, I do. I think he earns every minute of ice time that he gets, and he's just about under 24 minutes of ice time this season on average. He played almost 26 minutes the other night. Like, he plays a lot. He often plays on the top pair. He does not play top power play, and maybe that's important to him because that's where you really stockpile points assist-wise as a defenseman. You're not a number one defenseman. He's great. I think he's really good. I think he's a good number two defenseman on a good team, and I think he's a great number three. But how many teams in the league is Bo Byram the number one defenseman? It's not none, but it's not many. It's not many. And I would imagine a lot of those teams are not very good teams that he would be the number one defenseman on. But again, if that's his priority, I don't know that he is going to want to stay here long term because he's definitely behind Rasmus Dahlin. And I cannot imagine him ever jumping over Dahlin as the team's number one defenseman on the power play, minute-wise, all situations. So you're not going to be number one. And hell, you might not even be number two when it's all set and done because Owen Power has had, I think, a breakout season so far this year and is only improving and was a number one overall pick. So, you might be the number three guy here, which is fine. You're going to play a lot of minutes still. You might play number two power play unit. But if you want to be a number one, your road is kind of blocked in Buffalo from doing that. So, and why does he want to be a number one? Couple reasons. He probably does want the points. He's never had 30 points in his career. He's going to get that this year. He's got 18 already in 31 games. Like he's going to get to 30 points this year. Might get to 50, honestly. But he wants to play power play, I'm sure, because that's where you could stockpile points. And when you get points and you get more minutes and you're a number one guy, more money. That's where you cash out contract-wise. And here in Buffalo, the Sabres are already committing almost $20 million to two defensemen. And how much is Bo Byram going to get or think he's going to get on a team that already pays two defensemen $20 million? Are the Sabres going to want to pay $28 million to three defensemen? I mean, I don't mind that because the cap is going way up, but we know how they are about money. We know how they haven't spent to the cap almost every year for over a decade. Like, I question how much they'd want to spend out of their own pocket to one position. So with all that being said and surrounding all of that, like really this, I want to be a number one defenseman. If that gets expanded on in the future and becomes a real problem or some leverage that he wants to pull, that also could just be like, okay, man, like you want to be a number one defenseman? Wink, wink. We know what this is really about. It stinks here. We stink. The team stinks. The fans are mad, rightfully so, but the fans are mad. The building's empty. We get it. Maybe the facilities aren't up to the standards of every team in the league. You came from a winning culture in Colorado. You won the cup. You know what it takes to win. You realize that is not happening here. Like, Bo Byram might be all that and think, man, they just don't know. They have no clue here. Like, this is not what it takes. The resources are not here for the team to win. The group does not have it. Like, and maybe he hides all of that behind, well, I want to be a number one defenseman. That's really why I want to leave. That's also a possibility in my mind when it comes to Byram. So we'll see. Like, this is it's December, and I don't think that this becomes a talking point until we get closer to the trade deadline. And that's if Adams is even still the GM to ask like who is in that seat, and do they want to extend Bo Byram? Do they want to offer him a power contract, $8+ million a year? Do they want to try to get him on a bridge deal at like $5 million, $6 million per? What does Byram want to do with that? Does he just want out at some point? We'll see. These are questions you have to ask about every player that has leverage and has the ability to leave within a year or two. That's the nature of being this bad. Every player that is within 2 years of leaving, you have to wonder about them leaving. That's the life we're currently living as Sabre fans. That's the life we're currently living covering the Sabres. And Byram is going to be one of the next names that we talk about for that, especially that Friedman had heard that today. So there you go. One texter did reach out asking about Byram, and he did some good work. Like, hey, here's a couple teams that Byram would be the number one defenseman on. What do you think? And one of the teams he pointed out was Anaheim. And Anaheim's interesting because Anaheim, yeah, I think they just traded Cam Fowler away. They're kind of like the Sabres. They're kind of stuck in the mud. They want to get better, but they're really not. They're very young, and they just can't find their way to taking that next step. Anaheim, it would almost be like the reverse Casey Middlestat trade. Okay, if you don't want to worry about Byram leaving for nothing, do you want to swap Byram to Anaheim, where maybe he gets it all? He goes back to the West. If that's important to him, he gets to play in South. Hey, all those palm trees that we've been talking about, they've got those in Anaheim. You could go be the number one defenseman there as well. So maybe there's a contract to be worked out, and the Sabres can get back somebody that has term left on their contract. That could be Trevor Zegras, who's got this year and then next year, and then he's an RFA. So you get an extra year of control. It could be Troy Terry, who's in the prime of his career, 27 years old. He's got this year and then 3 more years after that. It's $7 million. Couple of names that might be ideas and a hockey type of trade for Bo Byram. That's going to do it for us, though, today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We'll see by tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe we're talking about changes, or maybe we're talking about absolutely nothing that's different other than Pegula went to go meet with the team. So we'll see what details we get on that front. We'll talk about Dylan Cousins as a trade idea because he's been a subject of that as of late as well. And we'll get you ready for the Sabres and the Canadiens on Tuesday night. Thanks for listening. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres if you want to sign up for our text club. Be sure to check out Steal and Flip with Locked On Fantasy Hockey. They'll have your tips and tricks throughout the week. You can catch that wherever you catch your podcast. Talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.